The Animal Family, Chapter 7, The Boy. In a little while they forgot that they had ever lived without the boy. Things would remind them, of course. It feels strange to make them so small, the mermaid would say, as she made the boy shoes and shirts and trousers of the softest, whitest deerskin, all covered with shell patterns of birds and flowers. She said about clothes, "I can see they're right for him." And she made a deerskin cap and then sewed so many blue jay feathers on it that you couldn't tell it was made of deerskin. The boy's head was one blaze of blue with all the feathers. The hunter made the boy 4 arrows and a bow as good as his own, only smaller. The boy wore them, but he was still too young to shoot with them, except when the hunter held his hands on the bow and the bowstring. The hunter made him a little bed, covered it with the skin of a mountain lion, hung the bow and arrows over it, and every night put him in it together with his toys, the ball and a fur bear and a wooden lynx and the hunter's necklace, so as not to hurt the mermaid's feelings. It was only being lent to the boy, and the carvings of the hunter's father and mother. Sometimes the real lynx would come in the middle of the night, and in the morning, when the boy awoke, the lynx would be there, curled at the bottom of the bed. The boy would reach down and stroke his head, and the lynx would yawn and give a sleepy purr. But the bear was too big for the bed. When he lay down by it, his head went up past its head, and his feet down past its foot. The mermaid and the hunter and the boy went to the beach almost as much as the mermaid and the hunter had gone in the old days. The boy loved the sand and shells, and the little shallow waves that splashed in over his legs and stomach. Sometimes the hunter, with the boy in his arms, would wade out to where the big waves were, and as some great green white-headed wave hung over them, about to break, it would seem to the boy that there was nothing in the world strong enough to save them, and then the hunter would thrust himself up powerfully. The wave would burst around them in a smother of white, salt, blinding foam, and the boy would gasp and shut his eyes, and when he opened them, he and the hunter stood there alone, and the wave was over. In a little pool at the side of the river, the mermaid taught the boy to swim. "The way I do," she said, "but with your legs." Before long, swimming was as natural to him as walking, just as hearing the mermaid's stories. Saying the mermaid's words were as natural to him as hearing the hunter's stories and saying the hunter's words. "He talks like one of the sea people," the mermaid said proudly. "Whatever he says, the little boy says with a watery sound." The hunter would gasp in his best dolphin, "Help me, help me, help me to the beach." And he asked the mermaid whether it sounded watery. The mermaid said, pointing, "Whatever you say has that walnut sound." "Live and let live," the hunter replied amicably. This was the way the mermaid had remembered live and let live, and the hunter hadn't corrected her, at first out of politeness, and then because her way made better sense to him. Of course, the mermaid had no idea that he was repeating her proverb, not his own. Sometimes they would tell the boy how the lynx had come for them and led them to him, and how they had found him pressed up against the bear, fast asleep. Once or twice they took him to the little marker that the hunter had put over his mother's grave. But except for 1 or 2 confused, uneasy dreams, all the boy's memories were memories of the mermaid and the hunter. He knew that the hunter was his father, and he knew the mermaid was his mother, and had always been. The 2 of them he knew were different from him, different from each other. But aren't a boy's mother and father always different from you, different from each other? The difference between the hunter and the mermaid was no greater to the boy than the difference between his father's short hair and trousers, his mother's long hair and skirts, would be to any child. The boy felt, "They're always telling me the lynx found me," but he would smile at his father and mother and pretend the lynx had found him. One day the hunter smiled back and said, "You must think you've lived with us always." The boy didn't know whether to say yes or no, and gave a laugh of confused joy, so that the mermaid smiled and said, "Yes, you do think you have lived with us always." The boy's heart beat faster, but he said, "No, the lynx found me." And this got to be a game of theirs, because he knew it wasn't so. The boy enjoyed saying the lynx found him, and the hunter and the mermaid enjoying saying that the boy had lived with them always, because of many things. The boy went to sleep before the hunter and the mermaid and woke up before them. Sometimes he and the lynx were the only things awake in the house. The boy would sit up in his bed and look around at the hunter asleep under the bearskin, the mermaid asleep on top of it, and the